the very respectable Professor Shaibu, former Speaker of Parliament, my very good brother, Most Reverend Boafo, with whom I have been working a lot for the past few weeks. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my uncle, respected Uncle Ablakwa Kujeto, Samuel, sorry, because they are related. All protocols observed. Let me also stand on the existing protocol and say I want to wish my respect for all of you for coming for us to meet this afternoon, and also thank you to IEA for the invitation for me to come and participate in this very, very important engagement. Let me preface my presentation with a general observation. Undoubtedly, mineral wealth to any nation constitutes an enduring blessing and guarantees for economic progress and prosperity. Ordinarily, therefore, wherever there is economic wealth, one, by way of logic, would expect that there will be economic prosperity. Ghana's mineral wealth, like Most Reverend Boafo said, is it a blessing or a curse? With the abundance of mineral resources that are deposited on our land, in our land, one would have expected that Ghana will not seek refuge in the IMF. And the contradiction is the reality that confronts us. Ghana is generally known as a country rich in huge mineral resources. Key among these mineral gifts of nature, as we mentioned here, our gold, our diamond, our bauxite, manganese. I grew up at Takwa, and I was traveling across from Takwa to Prestia to Bogoso to Dunkwao. I trained as a teacher at Sefiwioso, so it was my route. I traveled there. And I lived to see the gold extraction and how very strong people were being brought from the northern part of our country. And they were those who were now entering into the ground and extracting the gold. And most of them were left to die with serious disease of tuberculosis. Unknown to us as children at the time, when we see them being carried in the cargo cars, when they're being taken to do their work, we call them sardine. Sardine. And then when we say sardine, then they will hurl insults at us. But they were largely from the northern part of our country, largely. Strongly built, tall, because the work needed a very strong person to do. Petroleum. We've realized petroleum, and it was an excitement in the history of our oil extraction, the day that we were told that we have struck. And I'm sure at the time all of us will remember we were being warned to manage our expectations at the time, because a lot of lessons had then been learned from Nigeria. By the way, as we were rushing to go to IMF to take $3 billion US, one person in Nigeria, Dangote, had spent $12 billion US to build an oil refinery, just at the same time. I'm wondering, in fact, it's one of the questions that has been bothering my mind. of what advantage has the petroleum extraction been to us? I have been trying to look around and see what it has done to us ever since we struck. Recently, lithium also came up. And there was a debate with respect to the extraction of lithium in terms of the kind of agreement that we need to consider before we allow the extraction of that very important mineral. I have no information as to what has gone into it. I have no information. Other lesser known and lesser exploited minerals include clay, kaolin, mica, quartz, and the rest. The sad reality, though, as reflected in the state of our economy, is that in spite of a huge mineral deposit, Ghana has failed to optimize the benefits of same to the economic advantage of our nation. Indeed, I want to borrow a slogan, but not for the politics of it. I want to put in that, not for the politics of it. The best way to capture our economic contradiction comes in the words of the former president of the Republic of Ghana, and Adodankwa Akufo-Addo. Yetisi kaso, ekwamdiye. So, and then answer, yetena sikaso, ekwamdiye. Enora, yetena sikaso, ekwamdiye. Na neso krano, yetisi kaso, ekwamdiye. I want to add, yetisikaso ekom ekumyen. Yetisikaso eka eminyen. So he says that we are sitting on wealth. We are sitting on wealth. And yet we are hungry. That's what he means. And I'm saying that the day before yesterday, we sat on wealth and we felt hungry. Yesterday, we sat on wealth, we felt hungry. And even now, we are sitting on wealth and we are feeling hungry. We are sitting on wealth, but that we are also reeling under the heavy burden of indebtedness to the IMF. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two parts to the slogan. There are two parts to the slogan. The first part of it is yetisikaso. That's the first part of yetisikaso. We are sitting on wealth. And it's a clear description of our economic opportunities, a statement of fact about our mineral wealth, the gift of nature, which we recognize and appreciate. The logic is that when you have such an endowment, it must reflect in your way of life. But the second part of it is also a statement of fact. Nansu ekomdie. In other words, we have not been able to optimize or maximize the economic benefits of the minerals that we have. And so therefore, even though we have them in abundance, we are living under the burden of indebtedness. My heart breaks and bleeds under the circumstance when I see a woman just struggling to give birth, and there's no good road, and she had to be carried on a motorbike across a river. And in the process, she loses her life. My heart breaks and bleeds in modern day Ghana when I see far somewhere in the northern part of our country. When I see children in modern day Ghana lying on their tummies, writing. No chair to sit on. or an indication of the fact that our economy is unable to assume responsibility and carry the burden associated with requirement to provide infrastructure. Where is our wealth? Under the circumstance, our Ghana has continually been left with no option than to take refuge in the IMF bailout. As has been said, as at the time that we are doing this presentation, IMF bailout, we have sought IMF bailout to 17 times. And we are not sure, in my mind, if our condition will compel us to rather go to 18 times. Our wish, the difference between what we wish and the realities of our future. So our wish is that we never go there again. But when the reality does not permit or compels us, what decision do we take? I'm sure if any one of us is in government, they happen to be the president, probably you will have to take a decision. Painful as it may be, because if you don't also provide, especially in the politics of it, you will not be voted to power. Because you must provide. If you don't, you will not get. So, under some of those circumstances, we rush and go there, regardless of the stringent and very disadvantageous conditionalities that are associated with the IMF. I will not go back because Prof has, in fact, I wish that I never spoke, because what he said, I mean, covers everything, together with the most reverend. It has been argued that one of the key reasons why we find ourselves in the situation, especially in matters that relate to mining and mineral extraction, is that not thought throughout very well of the colonial era agreement that provides or offers greater advantage to the foreigner, to the detriment of the owner of the land. And so some of the weaknesses that I have found with respect to that, because it is important to identify these weaknesses, so it must guide any attempt tomorrow to want to sign any agreement related to mineral extraction. Because if you don't learn your lessons today, in fact, Prof has told us everything. So we must really learn and see where did we go wrong from pre-independence, when we began extracting gold, to independence, to all the reforms that we know that had been taken. What is the reason why we have not been able to maximize the benefit? And some of the weaknesses that I found, that the terms of the agreement were largely advantageous to the foreign firms, to the detriment of the state and its people. That is, they were formulated in favor of colonial economics. The second one is inadequate revenue. Despite being Africa's second largest producer of gold, Ghana has failed to translate mineral wealth into overall economic development. That is the reality that is confronting us. Weak or inadequate regulatory framework. Environmental degradation to the detriment of local communities. The last time I traveled to Prestia, and I look at how Prestia looks. I traveled to Prestia at the time I was a very young person. Having grown, there was a funeral and I traveled to Prestia. It's a terrible scene. It's a terrible scene. No development. Even the road at the time, I don't know now, but at the time, even the road, very, very bad. Perpetuating the disadvantages already created, the shortcomings of the colonial era agreement should give us reason, should give any government reason to begin to revisit our mineral extraction agreements. Because of this concern, several attempts have been made. Over the period, attempts at policy review of the mining sector has been made. The question remains to be answered as to whether those attempts were adequate enough to address those shortcomings. One of them, as mentioned earlier on, has to do with ownership and the mineral resources. Ownership of land and mineral resources. To ensure full control of Ghana's land and mineral resources, the 1992 Constitution empowers the President to be the main custodian. So it means that if you have a president, the president carries the burden of making sure that he preserves and protects and maintains through whatever policies that he has, and so on and so what arrangement he can put in place. So this one also therefore raises ethical questions about the actions and inactions of people that we select to become our presidents, and so on and so forth. What do they do? Are they conscious of that? What are the steps that they take? Within every space of 4 years and 8 years, 4 years, 8 years, how far have they been interested to make a review of the agreements such that a certain change will help, if not even addressing all the problem, but ameliorating the seriousness of the problem? So let me just read. My very good friend, Alhaji Husseini, is here. He's a lawyer. Because for the purposes of this, I decided to just The Constitution provides as follows in this particular sense. Every mineral in its natural state, in, under, or upon the land in Ghana, rivers, streams, waterfalls, throughout the country, the exclusive economic zone and area covered by territorial sea, a territorial sea, and then a continental shelf, is the property of the Republic, is the property of the Republic, and this will have an interest, and is vested in the President in trust for the people of Ghana. It raises an ethical question. From, let's say, after Kwame Nkrumah to the current president, how far have they addressed themselves to this provision of the 1992 Constitution? To be able to look at what is it that has to do with our mineral extraction and agreements that has to do with same. For me, it's a matter to be considered seriously. The directive principle of state policy. I think that the framers, the Constitution may have its challenges, but the framers of the Constitution actually were thoughtful. Were thoughtful. I think we have to commend them. We don't have to wash off everything that they have done. For them to have even added these portions meant that they were conscious of what belongs to the country. Except that we, as human beings, are those, how do we apply the Constitution? That's where we have our shortfalls. In the same vein, the directive principles of state policy highlights the efficient and ethical management of our economy. So what does it say? The state shall take all necessary action to ensure that the natural economy is managed in such a manner as to maximize, and I want to underscore maximize, to maximize the rate of economic development and to ensure maximum welfare. I think it's important that we underscore these words. Maximum welfare. Freedom, happiness of every person in Ghana. How far have we done so? It's also another ethical question, which I think that we need to address our minds to. In my search, I also became interested in the Mineral Mining Act 2006, Act 703, with all its deficiencies. former speaker just made reference to it. But at least it leaves a certain element of stewardship that is expected. So transaction contract or undertaking involving the grant of a right or concession by or on behalf of a person or a body of persons for the exploitation of a mineral in Ghana shall be subject to ratification by Parliament. The prior approval bit of it has been addressed. But I think that the fact that this has been stated should also tell us that we were expecting our Parliament to do something. These are people who are representing constituencies. They're supposed to act and behave in the best interest of those constituencies. So even in their minds alone, they should be able to say something needs to be done to this. Even if it has to be ratified, are there shortcomings in it that need to be addressed for us to be able to do so? Ghana's mining industry is beset with a number of challenges which need attention to ensure that the industry remains competitive, while at the same time ensures that the expected benefits due to the state, communities, and investors are realized. So let me just mention some of the few challenges which has also been highlighted earlier on. Environmental issues still confront us. Social and security issues arising out of mining operations. One of the things that I also observed, I went to Nigeria for election observation, and I went to the Bayelsa. It's one of the oil-rich regions of Nigeria. And it's a terrible scene, and because of that, the youth there are so violent. That is where they were doing the kidnappings. They kidnap, and then they will give you the sum of money to be paid for ransom before they can release. And that's why even in Ghana, we must be careful the security implications of what is happening to us. I hope that as we are dealing with this matter, we will not politicize it. I'm hoping that some bipartisan platform will be created so that as a nation, we are looking at it more in the broader interest of our country than to satisfy our political interest. Over-reliance on exploitation of traditional minerals is something that we also have to look at. Gold, diamond, yeah, these ones they are very traditional. But are there others, like the lithium that we are talking about? I think we need to consider, and as we consider that, we must look at the kind of arrangements that we make so that we are not shortchanged. The capacity of efficiency of state institutions in contract negotiations. Sometimes I have asked the question, I was not alive at the time, where I have not been born, because mineral extraction began in Ghana, some centuries ago. But who sat down and crafted out the agreement? All of them, were they foreigners? Are there some of them who are also Ghanaians? Could they have challenged that, look, what you are going to do to us, we will not give you the gold or whatever? Like in those days, the Aborigines Right Protection Society, when they were talking about even our land, they said the land is a trust even for children yet unborn. This land, Ghana, I'm much, much younger, but my uncle is here. My other uncles are here. My other uncle is there. But even me, I'm not growing younger. I'm not growing younger. And ultimately, I wish all of you long life. But ultimately, our generation will go. So another generation. Why do you leave your next generation with a burdensome situation to come and inherit? I'm very particular about what my son will ask me. Daddy, but what did you do? So all of us here, our generation. So what kind of situation are we living for these younger ones who are yet to be born? So we leave them with heavy burden of indebtedness, come and be struggling to deal with. That is our reality. It's a challenge. Inadequate consultation with other sector. And I love the point made by Most Reverend. I don't know where the NDPC will find a way, whether even in managing our resources, because it has to do with the planning. Is there space where they have something to do with even our mineral resources and how we're extracting them? And even in crafting the agreements, because they had to do, central to their mandate is development, planning development. Central. But as a nation, if we don't do so, thank you, Prof. Saudi Arabia, how come Saudi Arabia, they also bring in white people to come and extract. But how come Saudi Arabia is 100% self-sufficient? They build houses unoccupied, far into vast desert. Gaddafi, before he was killed, was doing same. Free education, free healthcare, free accommodation, because the money was in abundance. So he was distributing it to citizens. But these same people orchestrated his removal and very disgraceful assassination. So we have to keep this in our minds. Let me just jump to a few ethical concerns. With the power vested in the President and the Parliament to hold our land and minerals in trust, some ethical issues need to be considered in managing our country's mineral resources. So here I'm combining the Parliament and the President and the Executive. They have a duty. So unequal distribution of benefits with local communities bearing the brunt of negative social and environmental impact while recovering insufficient compensation. So most of the local communities there are impoverished. Weak governance framework, reflecting regulation gaps, an amendment that prioritizes non-essential areas. There is forced displacement due to environmental degradation, corruption, and a weak institutional framework is also another challenge. Power imbalance. We have the power imbalance. Powerful state entities and elites prioritize mining profit over environmental protection. And that's where I'm interested in. Who are those who usually will sit and engage in the negotiations? I do not have the information, but I hope that somebody can educate me. The oil we struck, what are the terms and how advantageous are they to us? I don't have that information. But maybe some of you, please, let's all search and see. Maybe, or maybe in the open forum, maybe somebody will help us and throw more light. Let me end up with some few solutions so I can sit down. We need to strengthen our legal framework in matters that relates to our mineral extraction. Review of Ghana's mining agreements to reflect national interest is something that we must consider. It must remain on the table. I wish the Parliament will make it an issue, a serious issue, to be looking at it again, bring it back to the table. Improve due diligence in all agreements. All agreements. I don't know, in those days, in Fanti, they say, is that when you see the white man, you have seen God? Because we are black. See, so when they are in our midst, they are so subservient. No confidence. And sometimes because of our situation, we seem to accept everything that they say. And sometimes the lure, what they lure us with, you can easily be dragged. So let's
fair distribution of the benefits of mining exploitations. Let's scrap special agreements that shield companies from taxes. Let's scrap that one. Let's scrap broad investors protection clauses, especially in the agreement. Strengthen parliamentary oversight. I'm interested in this one. Strengthen parliamentary oversight. And so the point that Prof made, the issue of prior approval and ratification, because that's what can guarantee us the protection. I think that is something that we must maintain. Enact mandatory community development acts. So as we extract the minerals, let's see of what advantage is it so that we don't see a repeat of Takwa, Bogoso, Obuasi, Konongo, and those places, but rather establish the good comparison between these towns and South African city, how do we call it? Johannesburg. So each of these towns, in its own right, must be developed because of the oil deposit, mineral deposit there, to match the standard of Johannesburg. I have traveled to Johannesburg before. It's a really beautiful place. Very, very beautiful place. And then let's prioritize local participation. And I'm sure if we're able to do even not all, but a few of this as a point of reflection, probably we'll be saving ourselves the danger of having to go to IMF. But IMF, I cannot assure you, if we have to go to 18 times, what is the circumstance? If we are able to, in the long term, to do more, we might be able to work against the possibility of our going back there. But as long as we remain in the way we are and the way we manage it, in the midst of poverty and economic deprivation, probably we might not have any option but say we are going there the 18 times and the 19 and the 20th times. Thank you so much.